that the depths of the past, the eras that we personally have known, specifically, I don't want to take the pop notion of it, but it's been discussed by Howes and his partner very scientifically. Generation X, the last generation to know the past, to be part of the continuum of history. Most of the time, we didn't learn it from our parents. We learned it from, just check something here. Check if this is rolling. That looked unprofessional, I'm sorry. It won't happen again. It is rolling. Growing up before, let's say, techno-fascism, whatever you want to call it, I call it techno-fascism. We Generation Xers born between 1965 and 1978. Some just say those who were born in the 60s and 70s. We're the smallest generation. We're very tightened in numbers and in the duration of our generation. This is largely due to divorce. The baby boomers were a huge generation. But the baby boomers weren't necessarily the parents of Generation X. Many times they were the parents of what we call Generation Y. I'm not going to say the millennials. And I don't want to get into all this pop terminology too much, although Howes has defined it well. What I'm saying is that Generation X was the last generation to be born. It had a combination of elements going for it positively. To be born outside of the information age. The information age existed in the Pentagon, in DARPA, and so on. It was eventually deployed, as is the case, to society. That's always the case with university laboratories and DARPA, with whom they cooperate. We have technology of the future that has not been deployed to us yet. There are no social revolutions. I will come back to my point about Generation X. There are no technological revolutions coming. Okay, it's all about the network. Okay, Twitter, all of these social networks. I belittle them completely. In fact, they're dangerous because it leads to distractive thinking. It leads to cluttered knowledge. It leads to not being able to wonder, to find a cure for cancer, to think. Wonderment has been the driving force of all great thinkers. You sit and you wonder about things, and you figure it out, or you come to conclusions, or maybe you have an epiphany. If you're of that type, like Feynman, perhaps. But it always requires meditative, in Greek it's called metanoia, mindfulness, and diakrisis, discernment, categories of thinking. Now we don't get that on social media. Now let me say that social media is disruptive. And we don't need disruptive. We need continuity. How do I know that? As I said, I am from Generation X. Let me just call it, my generation. I would like to give it a philosophical term, perhaps in philosophical grammar. I can find one. We were the ontological generation. That is to say, we could say things of ourselves that pertain to ourselves. We could say, we live in such a way, and we could predicate that as a property of we live in such a way. That's ontological. It's saying, does the word red have the property of red? Well, yes. Does the word red have the property of elephant? No, even if the elephant is red. These are distinct categories. Well, what's happened? What's happened now is that we are in a heterological world. We do say these things, that red can be predicated of an elephant, that an elephant can be predicated of red, or a tree can be predicated of a JPEG picture of the tree, although that's a bit more trickier and relates to grammatical and visual aspect, which we want to touch on because that's very important. Do rabbits run in herds? Maybe. Do ducks run or go in herds? No. Okay, two different aspects. Okay? Now, that relates to perspective and to dimensionality also. We won't go there. Not right now. Orders of magnitude in dimensionality, but we're not going to go there. Now, in the presence of my generation, when we were kids, and when we were teenagers, we would easily be able to relate to the fact that there are different perspectives. Okay, that these things exist. Yet, we were not caught up in that heterological dilemma of not knowing what is what. We knew what was what. And there's a crucial thing here. Insofar as now, in the information age, we are heterological, and insofar as we were ontological then, and insofar as the heterological gives us perspective on things, as I just said, aspectual portals, let's say. Take the example. No, let's go with Wittgenstein's aspect, visual aspect, which relates to grammar and perception. Direct connection between grammar and perception. The duck rabbit. Well, think of a duck rabbit. Draw a duck on a piece of paper, you'll see that that your eyes are moving like this and like this and like this, or your eyes aren't moving, but they feel like they're moving because they instantaneously, when they're watching a duck, they see a rabbit, and then they see a duck, and there's no effort, there's no trying, there's no act desire. As O'Shaughnessy would have said, there's no trying in it. It's automated. It's automated. We just perceive it. It's very passive. So it's called the duck rabbit. Now that offers perspective. Now going back to, do ducks run in herds? Go in herds? No. Okay. So that's the equivalent. That's the sentential. That's the assertion. That's the propositional equivalent, the verbal equivalent of a heterological assertion, a heterological predication. Do rabbits go in herds? Well, bulls run in herds. Bison go in herds. We know that. Other animals that we know of and we can think of, we don't need to think of right now, they go in herds. But there are other creatures like deer and other creatures, usually mammalian, who do move on the ground. They're ground animals. In herds, or in herdish patterns. They are herdish, let's say. So it's easy to say that rabbits do move in herds, okay, because they move together. There's still a slight difference there, which is very interesting, because you get to an aspectual dimension of that aspectual portal of perspective, which deepens the perspective. And it's ontological still, because rabbits, we can safely say, do go in herds. Now, combine this with the duck-rabbit perception that we talked about, and you can see in your mind, or you can see on the piece of paper, write down herd next to your duck-rabbit, and you will associate the word differently each time the visual perception flashes to your mind. That's very interesting. And you're able to connect it to that which is ontological, that which can be predicated of itself, and that which cannot, being the heterological. So, this is different. This is a different form of heterological logic or categorization or behavioral thinking in terms of characteristics or meanings or whatever, M-I-E-N, in terms that rabbits go in herds. Well, we don't say, we can't predicate a rabbit of a herd or herd of a rabbit, but we can say, we can put a rabbit, draw a really good rabbit that's obviously a rabbit with all of the bells and whistles and the ornamentation, make it really look like a rabbit, not just a lined rabbit that can also be seen as a duck, or not just, then it's clear that it's a rabbit. And that you can say of that, that it is herdish. And therefore it's ontological, but in a perceptual way, where you have to connect the verbal activity to the object activity. You have an object in the sentence and you have a subject and a verb. The herdish mentality in an adjective, the herdishness is the characteristic adjective that makes this ontological, behaviorally, strictly from a logical, categorical, let's say, set theoretical point of view, where you have to have, in sets, where you have to have, in intuitionist sets, where you have to have an existence and a disjunction property, whereby you can assert Q on the assertion of P if and only if Q were to occur, or if Q is present, or if Q happened, P would also happen. That's a contrary to fact condition. Now, that means that the contrary to fact conditional is, now, so to do that, you need an existential or wisdom, or witness property. And that means that that P and Q are intimately related. There's the existence property. They're only P and Q are related to each other. P is not related to anything else but Q in conditionship or in any sort of way. And Q is not related